Hi guys, this is Alex from Mason Lifestyle. I hope you guys are doing well. So for the last 2 weeks, I've been telling you about sweaters and sweater patterns and ready to wear and things you can match with that couple of ready to wear with patterns. So I thought that perhaps it might be good to do a sew along for Butterick 6857, and I'm doing view B. I have made a couple of modifications to the pattern, mostly to the neckline, so I can wear it closed since the pattern is done so you can wear it open. But without further ado, let's get started. Hi guys, today we are working on a sew along for Butterick 6857, and I'm going to do view B. I've been talking about this pattern on my last two videos about sweaters and also about how to get the ready to wear look with sewing patterns. And this one is one that showed up again and again and again and a lot of ready to wear for this year. And as I keep working on this pattern, I can see so much potential in it, but I'm going to be working on view B. So let me show you about the pieces you're going to need. You're going to need pattern piece number 7. And this is the front. And guys, the patterns, there is not a whole lot of cut on the fold. All the pieces are different from each other. So go ahead and cut one for piece number 7. This is the front. You're also going to need pattern piece number 8. Number 8, and this is the back. You're gonna cut one. You're also going to need pattern piece number 13. And this is the collar, and you're gonna cut 2. You're also going to need pattern piece number 14, and this is the front facing. You're gonna cut 1, and you're also going to interface this piece. You're also going to need pattern piece number 15, and you're going to cut one of fabric and one of interfacing. And lastly, you are going to need a pattern piece number 16. This is the sleeve, and you're going to cut 2. Guys, there is a lot of notches, a lot of dots on a lot of the pattern pieces. You can see the facings. You have a lot of notches, you have triangles. Go ahead and mark all of those. And if you are using, you have to use interfacing, make sure that you use interfacing that is especially for knits, which of course it stretches, right? So make sure that you are using the correct interfacing for this pattern. I am going to be using a sweater knit in my interfacing, but go ahead and do that now. All right, so first things first, we have the front and the back. These are pieces 7 and 8, and the pattern is asking us to go ahead and stitch right sides together, right? You have a notch on this side, and out of the two, I have my front piece and my back piece. And if you notice, this side is longer and this side shorter. We're gonna go for this shorter side. You have a notch. And as usual, start there and then go ahead and pin. And we are working with knits. So as usual, when we're working with knits, we are going to use a zigzag stitch or a lightning bolt stitch. And since I'm going to be working on the shoulders, I have this swimwear elastic, and I like to put this in my shoulders. So once I'm in the machine, again, 5/8 of an inch, I'm gonna put this in, and again, I'm going to stitch that in. All this does is reinforces your shoulder. For example, let's say you don't have swimwear elastic, you can also use ribbon. So if you have any type of ribbon, something nicer, something satiny, you just want to reinforce that shoulder. So go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance or 1.5 centimeter. And don't forget the back stitch at the start and all the way to the end. Go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stitched that shoulder and I put in my elastic. Again, I'm using a zigzag stitch and I finish my edge in my serger or my overlocker. If you don't have one, it's okay. We're working with knits. That's the great thing. They are not going to unravel on you, so that's awesome. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and put this off to the side, and I am going to grab pieces 13, and that is the collar. And you have a bunch of notches on this at the top, but what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and pin, and we are going to stitch this entire area on the outer edge. Okay, so I want you to pin. So again, I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance or 1.5 centimeter. Start at that dot, actually start at the edge, come all the way down and then pivot. Keep going down. Again, stop at that dot, pivot, and all the way to the edge. Go ahead and do that now for piece 13. Those are the colors. So I went ahead and stitched my pieces 13, which is a collar, and I left this side open. So now the pattern's asking us to go ahead and trim that seam allowance. Now the pattern is asking us to go ahead and turn this. I may get quite not where I want it. Definitely don't want to cut my stitches. I want to go ahead and turn. And then the pattern's also asking us to go ahead and understitch. So what is understitch? So understitching is essentially, if we have this, we have the two sides and we really want to make sure that one side doesn't show. In my case, it almost doesn't matter, but let's say that perhaps you have two different colors for your collar and your facing, right? So maybe perhaps the inside is a black plaid watch, right? That would be so fun in the holidays. So you definitely want to make sure that one side stays on that side. So I'm going to show you in the machine how I do this. All right, guys, so we're doing understitching, and we really want to make sure is that the seam allowance is towards the facing, and we do that because when we are wearing our collar, our sweater, we want to make sure that the facing does not come towards the other way. So you just want to make sure that you are stitching as close as possible to the seam, and of course, there is your seam. And when I am getting towards the edge, I'm just going to try to get as close as possible and just backstitch and finish there and keep going. But if you can't get to the edge, it's okay. once you do that, I want to make sure that you give this a really good press. All right, so we went ahead and stitched the collar and also went ahead and understitched. So the pattern's also asking you to go ahead and baste this open edge for the collar. I'm not going to do that right now. I just went ahead and pinned it with pins, but you can always baste it just so it doesn't move on you. So now I want you to grab your front and back pieces that we went ahead and stitched together. And of course, don't forget to press your shoulder seam towards the back. And you have 2 notches in the back right there and 2 notches in the front, and same thing on your collar. So go ahead and make sure you match those notches. And I'm not stretching my collar. I'm probably going to stretch it right here on this kind of like curve right here. Just make sure it fits. And you have this dot always at the shoulder, and you have this also in your collar, and it shows up in the pattern as a triangle. In triangles, it just means your shoulder seam. So you really want to make sure you match that right there and that you pin. Okay, and then again, you have also those 2 other notches in the back. Here's one. Okay, and then here's another one right there. Super important in this pattern to put all those notches, dots, and all that jazz on your pieces. Okay, got that right there. All right, so now that you have your collar completely pinned, I want you to go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. I'm probably going to start by the shoulder and work my way towards the front, at the shoulder, and work my way towards the back, just so this whole piece does not move on me. So go ahead and attach your collar now. All right, so I went ahead and attached my collar to my front and back bodice, or front and back pieces. And I want to say something. I had a couple of puckers on my knit. Just go ahead and unpick about 1/2 inch in front and back, and just go ahead and ease it in. Once you do that, give it a good press. But now I want to put this off to the side, and I want you to grab your facings. These are pieces 14 and 15, front and back facing. And you see this short area here on the left-hand side. I want you to go ahead and pin. And I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. And afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and serge my edge, but keep this side loose, all right? Go ahead and do that now for the front and back facing. These are pieces 14 and 15. Go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stitched pieces 14 and 15. This is in the front and back facing. So now, and I went ahead and trimmed that seam and pressed it open. So now I want you to grab your bodice again, right where you just put that color. And you see that is where my shoulder seam is at. So I'm gonna start there. Okay, and then again, I have 2 notches, one right here. And again, I'm doing the facing on the right side on top of that color that we just put in. Yes, feels a little odd to do that, but that's where we're gonna put it. You have that other notch right there. You may have to ease that in, right? So you may have to stretch that ever so slightly so it goes in. Again, you have this corner right here. And you have that edge. One. Again, you have, let's see, where are my notches? You have a notch right here. You have another notch right there. All right, guys, so I went ahead and pinned my entire facing in. You see how we have a couple of gaps, and here it's a little longer. Just go ahead and stretch your collar ever so slightly so your entire facing just fits. All right, so I want you to go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. When you get to the corners, make sure that you pivot. And again, keep going all the way around. Again, you got to the corner, pivot, and at the other side. So go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and attach your facings. All right, so I went ahead and attached my facing, and I got rid of all of that bulk since my fabric is a rayon, so it's got a lot of bulk right there. So I trimmed that seam allowance quite a bit. I also stitched in the ditch the facing right at the shoulder line. And the pattern also wants you to understitch. I decided not to do that, but I also want you to baste on the sides right here. Wants you to baste and also top stitch these shoulders right here, because eventually you're going to do buttonholes. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to wait till I do the buttonholes for that. But once you do that, I want you to go ahead and with right sides together, I want you to stitch the sides. So again, you got 2 notches right here. So once you have this pin on both sides, I want you to go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance or 1.5 centimeters. Go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stitched my sides, and I also finished them with my serger or my overlocker. And guys, that is one of those times that you are like, perhaps I like my sweater a little bit snug or something a little bit more loose. That's your chance when you stitch the sides to baste it in, try it out, see if you like it, see if you need to take it in a little bit more. So now we are gonna go ahead and add in the sleeves, but before we do, it's asking you to go ahead and baste this side together so you can add in the sleeves, right? That side that's open, and you're gonna go front over the back, all right? So make sure that you put a pin or that you baste it in because we are going to go ahead and add the sleeves. So go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and basted that in, and I'm gonna put this off to the side, and I'm going to grab my sleeves. These are pieces number 16, and you have notches here on the side, but I want you to go ahead and pin. And someone had asked me if I liked attaching my sleeves on my knits flat. I don't care for that, but if it is easier for you to do so, by all means, go ahead and do that. I just feel like once I attach them, I just don't quite like how they fit. I can't explain it. There's just something a little off about it, and I don't care for it as much as sitting in my sleeves. But again, if it's easier for you to set in your sleeves flat on a knit, by all means, do that, and you would have to do it before you stitch the side seams, all right? So I'm going to set in my sleeves, but again, piece 16, you have 2 of them. Go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and all the way to the end, and also go ahead and finish your raw edge. Again, we're working with knits, so we don't need to do that because they will not unravel, but if you have an overlocker, it'll look much nicer. So go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so next thing that we have is attaching our sleeves. And you have your sleeve. You always want to do with right sides together, so kind of put in your sleeve in there. And I always like to start by matching that seam right there, always. And then you have notches on your sleeve and on your pattern piece. There's 1 notch, always means the front. I always like to pin those. And 2 notches means the back. If those don't match, something's off. Maybe you have the sleeve on the wrong side. So always make sure you match those. And I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times that that those don't match for me sometimes on knits, and that's why I have to use washi tapes to kind of just guide me a little bit. You also have dots on your sleeve, and you have dots on your bodice, so you kind of want to match those, right? Another one over here, and you're supposed to have 3. For some reason, I only have 2. The 3rd one is usually at the top of the sleeve cap. Not so worried about that. With knits, with wovens, it's a whole nother different, a different animal. But gonna pin. And usually I would have this gap like this, and I like to take a page from Mimi G, and I'm doing this on my pieces, my top, not my sleeve. And I'm making sure that I'm doing this within the seam allowance, okay? then I can go ahead and ease in my sleeves without having to do those 2 rows of stitches. So go ahead and set in your sleeve and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance or 1.5 centimeter all the way around. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. And guys, I am going to set in the sleeve on one side first. And this one I set it in because I wanted to make sure that it fits, right? That it fits in the armhole. But I'm actually, once I set this one in, I'm going to wait to set this sleeve in because I want to make sure that I can get in there and do the buttonholes. So I'm going to take off the sleeve, want to make sure that it fit, that I had this in correctly basted. It does. I'm going to take off this sleeve, do my buttonholes, right? On my shoulders, just going to be easier for my machine to get in there. And after I do my buttonholes, I'll set in my sleeve. But that's how you set in your sleeves. All right, so I went ahead and did my buttonholes, and then I set in that sleeve. Guys, the telltale of a good sleeve that you put it in, that those underarm seams match, right? And that you have no puckers. And if you have some puckers on your sleeve, just go ahead and unpick about 1/2 inch in front and 1/2 inch in back and go ahead and ease it in. I put in my buttonholes. I have to put in my buttons, right? And then the last thing that we have to do is we have to do this hem on our sleeve and also on the bodice. So the pattern's asking you to go ahead and turn it and then turn it 1/4 inch and top stitch. I'm just gonna go ahead and serge my hem and then just turn it up and top stitch. And guys, that is it. I hope you like the sew along. All right, guys, I hope you liked that sew along. If you did, go ahead and please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. And of course, as always, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. I am always happy to answer those. I did put a review for this pattern on my website, and I linked the fabric that I used. All right, guys, till next time. Bye.